My name is Hazel, and I'm 34 years old. As a software engineer, I've built a successful career that many would envy. But within my own family, I might as well have been invisible. For nearly 20 years, my birthday has been an afterthought, while my brother Jackson's celebrations were planned months in advance with no expense spared. This year, though, as July approached, I made a decision that would finally change everything. While I share how I finally decided to celebrate myself, let me know where you're watching from and hit that like and subscribe button if you've ever needed to put yourself first. Growing up as the second child in the Montgomery family wasn't easy. I was born on July 15th, a summer baby with a love for sunshine and adventure. My older brother Jackson, however, was born just 5 days later on July 20th. Those 5 days might seem insignificant, but they set the stage for a lifetime pattern of being overshadowed. My father Thomas was a successful accountant, and my mother Eleanor was a dedicated high school teacher. They were good parents in many ways, providing us with a comfortable home in suburban Massachusetts, supporting our education, and creating a stable environment. But there was always an unmistakable difference in how they treated Jackson and me. Jackson was their firstborn, their precious son, and a naturally gifted athlete who excelled in every sport he tried. From baseball to swimming to track, he collected trophies and medals that my parents proudly displayed in our living room. Every achievement was celebrated, every game attended, every victory commemorated with photos that lined our hallway walls. When I turned 8, I had been looking forward to my birthday for weeks. I'd carefully written invitations to my friends, planning a small party with games in our backyard. 3 days before my birthday, my mother sat me down in our kitchen. "Hazel, sweetie," she said, her voice gentle but firm, "we need to postpone your party this weekend. Your brother's baseball team made it to the state finals and the game is on Saturday. We'll celebrate your birthday next weekend instead, okay?" I nodded, fighting back tears as I helped my mother call each of my friends to change the plans. When next weekend came, half of my friends couldn't make it anymore because of other commitments. The party was smaller, quieter, and clearly an afterthought compared to the excitement of Jackson's baseball victory that my parents were still celebrating. By the time I turned 10, I had learned to lower my expectations. That year, my birthday fell on a Tuesday, and I came down to breakfast, hoping at least for my mother's traditional birthday pancakes. Instead, I found an empty kitchen with a hastily scribbled note gone to Jackson's swim meet qualification, cereal in the pantry, back by dinner. The entire day passed without acknowledgement. When my parents finally returned home that evening, excited about Jackson qualifying for regionals, I quietly mentioned, "It's my birthday today." The look of horror on my mother's face would have been comical if it hadn't hurt so much. "Oh, Hazel, I completely forgot. With all the excitement of Jackson's meet," she hugged me tightly. "We'll make it up to you this weekend, I promise." That weekend came and went with no mention of my birthday. When I reminded them again, they took me for ice cream and gave me a gift card to a bookstore. It felt like an obligation, not a celebration. When I turned 13, a milestone birthday by anyone's standards, my parents suggested combining my celebration with Jackson's, since our birthdays were so close together. "It'll be more efficient," my father explained. "We can invite everyone for one big party instead of 2 smaller ones." The party was held on July 17th, technically between our birthdays. But it might as well have been Jackson's alone. The decorations featured basketballs and sports equipment reflecting his interests, not mine. The chocolate cake, which I was allergic to, was his favourite flavour. Even the guests were primarily his friends, with only 3 of mine invited as an apparent afterthought. During the party, my mother gathered everyone to make announcements. She spent 5 minutes praising Jackson's athletic accomplishments, before briefly mentioning, almost as a footnote, and of course, we're also celebrating Hazel's birthday. She's doing very well in school. That was the moment I stopped expecting acknowledgement from my family. I realized that in their eyes, my quiet academic achievements would never measure up to Jackson's more visible athletic successes. I began to create my own small traditions for my birthday, saving my allowance to buy myself a book or treating myself to a movie alone. Throughout high school, I poured myself into academics, hoping that excellence might finally capture my parents' attention. I joined the debate team, won the state science fair, and graduated as valedictorian. At each event, my parents attended and politely applauded, but their true enthusiasm was reserved for Jackson's games and meets. When my debate team won nationals, my father patted my shoulder and said, "That's nice, Hazel, very nice." The same weekend, when Jackson's team won a regular season basketball game, my parents took him out for a celebration dinner. I wasn't invited, told only after they returned home where they'd been. Those years taught me a painful lesson about invisibility. I could achieve and succeed, but somehow it was never enough to warrant the spotlight in my family. I learnt to find validation in my own accomplishments, to celebrate my own successes privately. But the sting of being overlooked never truly faded. The pattern established in my childhood continued well into my adult years. When I was accepted to MIT with a full scholarship, my parents were pleased but distracted. The acceptance letter arrived the same day as Jackson's college basketball team making it to the conference finals. Guess which news dominated dinner conversation that night? "That's wonderful, Hazel," my mother said, scanning my acceptance letter quickly. "A full scholarship that will save us money for Jackson's graduate school." I left for college with mixed emotions. Part of me was heartbroken to leave home without the enthusiastic send-off I'd secretly hoped for. But another part was relieved to escape the constant reminder of my second-place status in the family hierarchy. At MIT, I thrived. For the first time, I was in an environment where academic excellence was the highest currency. My professors noticed my work, my peers respected my abilities, and I began to build confidence in myself that had been slowly chipped away throughout my childhood. I majored in computer science, discovered a passion for software development, and graduated with multiple job offers from top tech companies. I chose a position at a growing startup in Boston, partly to stay somewhat close to home, still harboring hopes that my professional success might finally earn my parents' full attention and pride. During those early career years, holidays and special occasions at home followed the same old script. Thanksgiving conversations centered around Jackson's job at a prestigious sports marketing firm. Christmas gifts for him were thoughtful and expensive, while mine were generic and forgettable. One Christmas, my father gave Jackson an expensive watch that had belonged to our grandfather. "He would have wanted you to have this," my father said proudly. My gift that year was a department store gift card. Meanwhile, at work, I was thriving. I coded innovative solutions, led successful projects, and earned the respect of my colleagues and supervisors. 3 years into my career, I was promoted to senior developer, the youngest in company history to achieve that position. When I called home to share the news, my mother answered. "That's nice, dear," she said distractedly. "Did you hear Jackson is dating a model now? She might be the one. We're so excited to meet her at Easter." Each interaction like this cut deeply, but I continued to seek their approval. I'd bring thoughtful gifts when visiting home, share stories of my accomplishments, and make efforts to connect. Yet the pattern remained unchanged, with Jackson's life and achievements taking center stage while mine were barely acknowledged. Over time, I began visiting home less frequently. The emotional toll of being perpetually overlooked became too heavy to bear regularly. I started building what I called my chosen family. Friends who celebrated my successes, remembered my birthday, and made me feel valued. The most important of these was Sarah, whom I met at a tech conference 5 years into my career. We bonded over being women in a male-dominated industry, but our friendship quickly grew beyond professional solidarity. Sarah was the first person who ever made my birthday feel special. For my 28th birthday, she surprised me with a small gathering of friends at my favorite restaurant. The table was decorated with balloons and a banner. There were thoughtful gifts wrapped in my favorite colors, and there was a cake, lemon with vanilla frosting, my favorite, that I'd mentioned only once in passing. I nearly cried when I saw it all. "No one's ever done anything like this for me," I admitted to Sarah. She looked shocked. "What about your family?" I shrugged, uncomfortable with sharing the full truth. "They're just not big on birthdays." "I sent them. Not even for their only daughter," Sarah pressed. That night, after several glasses of wine, I told Sarah everything. The years of forgotten birthdays, the combined celebrations that were really just for Jackson, the constant feeling of being an afterthought in my own family. "That's not normal, Hazel," Sarah said firmly, "and it's not okay." Her words were a revelation. For years, I'd normalized my family's behavior, accepted it as just how things were. Sarah's perspective helped me see the situation more clearly, though it would take several more years before I found the courage to address it. My 30s brought even greater professional success. I moved to a major tech company, earned substantial raises, and began building significant savings. I maintained close friendships with Sarah and others who valued me. I dated occasionally, though I noticed a pattern of choosing emotionally unavailable partners, something my therapist later helped me connect to my family dynamics. Through it all, I maintained contact with my family, still hoping for change. Each year, my birthday would pass with minimal acknowledgement, perhaps a text message or brief phone call. while Jackson's continued to be celebrated with enthusiasm. I told myself it didn't matter anymore, that I had built a life where I was appreciated elsewhere, but the hurt never truly disappeared. Last year, as my 33rd birthday approached, I made a decision that I thought might finally change things. After years of minimal visits home, I scheduled time off work and planned a trip back to see my family, deliberately timing it to include my birthday. I called my mother 2 weeks in advance. "I'll be coming home from the 13th through the 16th, I said, emphasizing the dates. "I thought it would be nice to spend my birthday with family this year." "That's wonderful, darling," my mother exclaimed, sounding genuinely pleased. "We've missed having you around. It'll be lovely to catch up." Her enthusiasm gave me hope that perhaps finally things would be different. I packed my bags with a sense of cautious optimism, selecting a nice outfit for what I hoped might be a small birthday dinner with my parents. When I arrived at my parents' suburban home on July 13th, I was surprised to see unfamiliar cars in the driveway. Inside, I found my mother directing caterers in the kitchen, while my father arranged extra chairs in the dining room. "What's all this?" I asked, setting down my suitcase in the entryway. "Oh, Hazel." My mother looked up, seeming startled to see me. "I completely forgot you were arriving today. We're preparing for Jackson's birthday celebration this weekend." My heart sank. His birthday isn't until the 20th. "Yes, but he's going to be in Europe for work then, so we're celebrating early this year. Isn't that wonderful? The whole family will be here, aunts, uncles, cousins. Everyone's coming to celebrate his big promotion." I forced a smile. "That sounds great. Where should I put my things?" "We've given the guest room to your Aunt Linda and Uncle Paul since they're staying the whole weekend. Would you mind taking the sofa bed in the den? It's just for a few days." I nodded and carried my bag to the den, fighting back tears. Not only had they scheduled a huge celebration for Jackson days before his actual birthday, but they'd also completely forgotten that I was coming home specifically for mine. That evening, I sat quietly at dinner while my parents discussed final arrangements for Jackson's party. Neither of them mentioned my birthday, which was now just 2 days away. I considered bringing it up, but couldn't bring myself to do it, the familiar pattern of making myself small reasserting itself automatically. The next day, as I helped my mother arrange flowers for the centerpieces, I casually mentioned, "So do you have any plans for the 15th? She looked momentarily confused. "The 15th? No, Jackson's party is on the 16th. Why?" The pain that shot through me was so acute I nearly gasped. "It's my birthday," I said quietly. My mother's hand flew to her mouth. "Oh, of course it is. I'm sorry, Hazel, with all the party planning, it completely slipped my mind." She looked genuinely contrite, which somehow made it worse. My birthday wasn't merely competing with Jackson's this time. It had been completely erased from her consciousness, despite our conversation just 2 weeks earlier. "We can do something small on the 15th, she offered. "Maybe breakfast before the relatives start arriving, or we could go out for lunch, just the two of us." I forced a smile. Lunch would be nice. That lunch never happened. On the morning of my birthday, my mother was too busy with last-minute party arrangements to leave the house. My father was sent to pick up Jackson from the airport. No one said happy birthday until late that evening, when my mother suddenly remembered while we were washing dishes after dinner. "Oh, Hazel, it's your birthday today." She dried her hands and gave me a quick hug. "I'm so sorry we didn't do anything special. Things have been so hectic with the party tomorrow." "It's fine," I lied. "It's just another day." That night, I wandered through the house while everyone slept, looking at the family photos that lined the walls. There were dozens of Jackson in his various sports uniforms at graduations, with girlfriends at award ceremonies. I appeared in less than a quarter of the photos, always slightly to the side, often partially cropped out. In my parents' room, I noticed a small box on my father's dresser. Curiosity got the better of me, and I peeked inside to find an expensive Rolex watch with an engraving on the back. "To Jackson with pride and love on your 33rd birthday, Mum and Dad." I closed the box and returned to the den, lying awake for hours. My gift that year had been a gift card to a chain restaurant sent via email 3 days after my actual birthday, with a message that simply read, "Happy birthday, love, Mum and Dad." The next day was Jackson's party. He arrived with his new girlfriend, a beautiful marketing executive who charmed everyone immediately. The house was filled with relatives exclaiming over how wonderful he looked, how impressive his career was, how lucky he was to have such supportive parents. At one point, my Aunt Linda approached me. "Hazel, it's been ages. What have you been up to?" Before I could answer, my mother interjected. "Hazel's still at that tech company." Now, have you heard about Jackson's new position? He's going to be managing their European accounts. That evening, after most guests had left, my phone pinged with a text message from my parents' number. Happy belated birthday, Hazel. Sorry things were so busy. Hope you had a good day. Love, Mom and Dad. I packed my bags that night and checked into a hotel, telling my parents I had an early flight the next morning due to a work emergency. In truth, I couldn't bear another minute in that house, where I felt so thoroughly unseen. On the flight home, I made a promise to myself I would never again put myself in a position to be hurt by their neglect. I had spent 33 years seeking validation from people who were constitutionally unable to provide it. It was time to stop. The year following that painful birthday was transformative. At work, my team successfully launched a major project that attracted industry attention, leading to my promotion to technical director. With the promotion came a substantial salary increase and a significant performance bonus, the largest of my career. The financial windfall came at a time when I was actively reassessing every aspect of my life. I had begun seeing a therapist, Jamie, specifically to address my family issues and their impact on my self-worth and relationships. What would it look like to celebrate yourself the way you've always wanted to be celebrated? Jamie asked during one session as my 34th birthday approached. The question lingered with me for days. What would it look like to treat myself with the care and consideration I'd always craved from my family? The answer began to take shape during a weekend getaway with Sarah and 2 other close friends in late May. We had rented a cabin near a small lake in New Hampshire, about 2 hours from Boston. One afternoon, while the others napped, I took a walk along the lakeshore and noticed a for sale sign in front of a charming cedar-sided house with a wraparound porch. Out of curiosity, I walked up the driveway to peek at the property details. The house was smaller than I'd initially thought. 2 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, just under 1,500 square feet. But it sat on nearly an acre of land with 200 feet of lake frontage. The asking price was high, but not completely out of reach, especially with my recent bonus. I snapped a few photos with my phone and continued my walk, but something about the house stayed with me. That evening, I looked up the listing online and found more details built in the 1980s, but recently renovated new roof-updated kitchen, wood-burning fireplace, private dock. You seem distracted, Sarah noted as we prepared dinner in the rental cabin. I showed her the listing on my phone. I saw this house today. There's something about it that just feels right. Sarah scrolled through the photos. It's beautiful. Are you seriously considering it? Maybe, I admitted. I've been saving for years with no real plan for the money. And after that bonus, you should at least look at it, Sarah encouraged. What's the harm in that? The next morning, I called the realtor listed on the sign and scheduled a viewing for later that day before we headed back to Boston. Walking through the house, I felt an immediate sense of peace. The main living area featured large windows overlooking the lake, filling the space with natural light. The primary bedroom had its own small deck facing the water. The second bedroom was perfect for a home office. The sellers are motivated, the realtor mentioned. They're relocating for work and need to close quickly. I thanked her for the showing and promised to be in touch, my mind already calculating figures and possibilities. Back in Boston, I met with my financial advisor to discuss the feasibility of purchasing the lake house. With my savings bonus and excellent credit score, I could make a substantial down payment and still maintain a comfortable emergency fund. It's a significant investment, my advisor cautioned, but you're in a strong position to handle it. And lakefront property in New Hampshire tends to hold its value well. For the next 2 weeks, I deliberated, made lists of pros and cons, researched property taxes and maintenance costs, and tried to talk myself out of what felt like an impulsive decision. But I kept coming back to the same thought after a lifetime of putting others first, of shrinking myself to fit into the space my family allowed me. Didn't I deserve something that was just for me? In early June, I made an offer on the lake house. After a brief negotiation, it was accepted. The sellers agreed to an expedited closing process, which meant I could potentially take ownership by early July. Just in time for my birthday. As the closing date approached, I told no one except Sarah and my therapist about the purchase. It felt like a sacred secret, something I was doing purely for myself without seeking anyone else's approval or validation. 1 week before my birthday, the inevitable text arrived from my mother. Jackson's birthday party will be on the 20th this year. Everyone will be there. Can you make it? No mention of my birthday. No acknowledgement that I might have plans of my own. just the expectation that I would once again orbit around Jackson's celebration. I replied simply, "Sorry, I have other plans that weekend. Send Jackson my love." For the first time in my adult life, I had no intention of calling home on my birthday, no expectation of even the perfunctory acknowledgement I usually received. Instead, I had made other plans that centered entirely around my own joy and celebration. The closing on the lake house was scheduled for July 14th, the day before my birthday. As I signed the final documents and received the keys, I felt a surge of emotion so powerful I had to take a moment to compose myself before thanking the attorneys and real estate agents. That afternoon, I drove to my new home with a car full of basic supplies, bedding towels, kitchen essentials, and a small suitcase of clothes. Sarah would be joining me the next day along with 3 other close friends who had taken the day off work to help me celebrate my birthday in my new home. As I unlocked the front door and stepped inside the house, now empty of the previous owner's belongings, I felt a profound sense of rightness. This space was mine, created by me for me. No one could diminish it or push me to the margins here. I spent that evening sitting on the dock watching the sunset over the lake, feeling more at peace than I had in years. For my birthday the next day, I had planned a small gathering. Nothing elaborate, just good food, good friends, and the quiet celebration of a new beginning. Little did I know that my small act of self-celebration was about to create ripples that would finally disrupt decades of family dynamics. I woke on my 34th birthday to sunlight streaming through the windows of my new lake house. For a moment, I lay still, listening to the gentle lapping of water against the shore and the distant call of a loon. This was it. My first birthday in my own retreat, a day that would be celebrated exactly as I wanted. I made coffee and carried it out to the porch where I sat watching the morning mist rise off the lake. My phone charging inside had been silent all morning. No messages from my family, not even the perfunctory text I usually received. Instead, I had dozens of birthday wishes from friends and colleagues who had remembered without prompting. Around noon, Sarah arrived with our other friends Amanda, Dia, and Luis. They carried bags of groceries, a small stack of wrapped gifts, and a homemade cake that Sarah had baked herself. "Happy birthday, homeowner!" Sarah called as she swept me into a hug. The others followed suit, filling my new house with laughter and warmth. We spent the afternoon exploring the property, wading in the lake, and helping me plan where furniture would go. My friends had pulled together to buy me an Adirondack chair, set for the dock, which we assembled while sharing stories and jokes. As evening approached, we prepared a simple but delicious dinner of grilled fish and vegetables, eating on the porch as the sun began to set. After dinner came cake and champagne, followed by gifts that were thoughtful and personal: a framed vintage map of the lake, a set of locally made pottery mugs, a beautiful outdoor lantern. "Make a wish," Sarah said as I prepared to blow out my candles. I closed my eyes thinking of all the birthday wishes I'd made throughout my life. Most of them some variation of wanting to be seen to be valued to matter. This year my wish was different. I wished for the strength to continue prioritizing my own happiness, to build a life that fulfilled me, regardless of my family's recognition. After the cake, as we sat on the porch watching the stars emerge, I felt an impulse I couldn't quite explain. I gathered my friends for a photo in front of the lake house, then asked Sarah to take a few shots of just me on the dock and on the porch, smiling more genuinely than I had in family photos for years. Later, after my friends had gone to bed in the various sleeping arrangements we'd improvised, in the still mostly empty house, I scrolled through the photos. There was something powerful about these images. Me standing confidently in front of a beautiful home that I had purchased for myself, surrounded by people who truly celebrated me. Without overthinking it, I selected the best photo, me sitting on the dock with the house visible in the background, sunset colors reflecting on the lake, and posted it to my rarely used social media account with a simple caption, "Birthday gift to myself." I put my phone on silent and went to bed content with my quiet celebration and not particularly concerned about reactions to my post. I had shared it more as a personal declaration than anything else, a statement that I was finally choosing myself. The next morning, I woke to the sound of my friends making breakfast in the kitchen. When I finally checked my phone, I was surprised to find it buzzing with notifications. My simple post had garnered dozens of likes and comments, mostly from colleagues and distant friends, expressing admiration and congratulations. But buried among the notifications were 3 missed calls from my mother and 1 from my father, along with a text from my brother asking if I was okay. Before I could decide whether to respond, my phone rang again with my mother's number. Taking a deep breath, I stepped out onto the porch and answered. "Hello." Hazel, what is this house? What do you mean, birthday gift to yourself? My mother's voice was tight with what sounded like both concern and indignation. It's exactly what it looks like, I replied calmly. I bought myself a lake house in New Hampshire. I closed on it yesterday and spent my birthday here with friends. Issue, a house. You bought a house without telling any of us. How could you make such a huge decision without consulting your family? Her reaction was so absurd that I nearly laughed. Mum, I'm 34 years old. I've been making my own financial decisions for years. But this is showing off Hazel. Posting pictures like that, making such a statement. It's like you're trying to make some kind of point. And there it was. The truth breaking through. She wasn't upset that I had made a major purchase without consulting them. She was upset that I had publicly celebrated myself in a way that couldn't be diminished or overlooked. Maybe I am making a point, I said quietly. Maybe I'm tired of waiting for my family to remember that my birthday matters too. What are you talking about? We always acknowledge your birthday. Acknowledge, yes. Celebrate, no. My voice remained steady, though my heart was racing. Mum, when was the last time you actually planned something special for my birthday? When was the last time it wasn't an afterthought to Jackson's celebrations? There was a long silence on the other end of the line. Then in a softer voice, my mother said, We've always been busy around your birthday. Jackson's falls so close, and with summer activities. It's always been about Jackson, I finished for her. Every year, every celebration, every family gathering. I've spent my whole life feeling invisible in my own family. That's not fair, Hazel. We love you just as much as we love your brother. But you don't show it, Mum, not in ways that matter. Another long pause. Is that what this house is about? Some kind of revenge because you feel we didn't pay enough attention to you growing up. The suggestion was so reductive that it momentarily stole my breath. This house is about me finally doing something wonderful for myself instead of waiting for validation I'm never going to get from my family. It's not revenge, it's self-care. Shortly after hanging up with my mother, my phone rang again. This time it was Jackson. Hey sis, he said, his voice unusually subdued. Nice house. Thanks, I replied, waiting for whatever would come next. Mum's pretty upset. I gathered that. A long pause. I didn't know you felt that way. About your birthdays, I mean. His words caught me off guard. What did Mum tell you? Not much, but I saw your post and read between the lines. Then I started thinking about it and I can't remember the last time we actually celebrated your birthday properly. It's always been combined with mine or overlooked entirely, hasn't it? The simple acknowledgement nearly brought tears to my eyes. Yes. I'm sorry, Hazel. I never realized. I guess I just took it for granted that the attention was always on me. That wasn't fair to you. It wasn't your fault, I said automatically. Maybe not directly, but I could have noticed. I could have said something. He paused. The house looks amazing, by the way. You deserve it. His words were like a balm to an old wound. Not enough to heal it completely, but a start. My conversation with my father later that day was less productive. He called as I was helping my friends clean up before they departed. Hazel, what were you thinking spending money like that? He demanded without preamble. Hello to you too, Dad. Don't be smart with me. Do you know how irresponsible it is to buy property on impulse? What if you lose your job? What if the market crashes? I took a deep breath. I didn't buy it on impulse. I consulted with my financial advisor, reviewed my savings and investments, and made a calculated decision based on my current financial situation, which is very secure. You could have used that money to help with Jackson's wedding. He and Tracy are talking about getting engaged soon, and you know how expensive weddings are these days. And there it was again, the expectation that my resources should naturally flow towards supporting my brother rather than creating joy in my own life. Dad, I love Jackson, but his wedding is not my financial responsibility. I've worked hard for my money, and I'm entitled to spend it on things that make me happy. This is all about attention, isn't it? He said, his voice hardening. You've always been jealous of the attention Jackson gets. The accusation, so similar to my mother's, struck deep. This isn't about jealousy, Dad. It's about finally acknowledging that I matter too, that my happiness counts just as much as Jackson's. Of course you matter, he sputtered. We've given you everything. Except recognition, I said quietly. Except celebration. Except the feeling that my achievements and my special days are worth remembering. The call ended with my father still frustrated and me emotionally exhausted, but somehow lighter, as if speaking these long-held truths had freed something within me. As my friends prepared to leave that afternoon, Sarah pulled me aside. "Are you okay? That sounded intense." I smiled, surprised to realize that despite the emotional turbulence, I did feel okay. Better than okay. "I'm good. Actually, I think this needed to happen a long time ago." After everyone left, I sat alone on my dock watching the sun sparkle on the water. For the first time in my life, I had stood up for my own worth, refused to accept the scraps of attention my family had conditioned me to be grateful for. It wasn't a clean resolution. Family wounds never heal that neatly, but it was a beginning. My phone pinged with the text from Jackson, "Happy belated birthday, sis, for real this time." It was small, but it was something. And for now, sitting on the dock of my own lake house on a beautiful summer day, it was enough. In the weeks following my birthday confrontation, I transformed the lake house into a true sanctuary. Each piece of furniture I selected, each color I painted the walls, each decorative touch I added was chosen with deliberate care. Not to impress others, but to please myself. I hosted a proper housewarming party in August, inviting Sarah and our wider circle of friends, including co-workers who had become important parts of my chosen family. We barbecued on the new grill on the deck, swam in the lake, and toasted to new beginnings as the sun set over the water. "This place is so you," Amanda commented as we sat on the dock with glasses of wine. "Peaceful, but with hidden depths." I laughed. That might be the nicest thing anyone's ever said about me. Yep. What made the day even more special was that nobody mentioned my family drama. There were no pitying looks, no awkward questions about whether I'd heard from my parents. My friends simply celebrated this new chapter with me, allowing the day to be about joy rather than healing. The following week, I received a letter in the mail. Not an email or text, but an actual handwritten letter on my mother's monogrammed stationery. With trembling hands, I opened it on my porch overlooking the lake. "Dear Hazel," she began, "I've started this letter a dozen times, struggling to find the right words. First, let me say that your lake house looks beautiful in the photos, and I'm genuinely happy that you've found a place that brings you such obvious joy. Second, and much harder to write, is an apology. After our phone conversation, I spent several days reflecting on what you said about your birthdays and feeling invisible in our family. My instinct was to deny it, to defend our parenting choices, to insist that we always loved you equally. But then I did something I should have done years ago. I went through our family photo albums and counted. The evidence was right there in our own documentation of family life. For every photo of you, there are at least 5 of Jackson. For every accomplishment of yours that we recorded, we celebrated a dozen of his. I don't know how we fell into this pattern or why we couldn't see it ourselves. Perhaps it was because Jackson's achievements were more public, more immediately visible. Perhaps it was because he demanded attention in ways that your quieter nature did not. Perhaps as mothers of my generation were often taught, I unconsciously gave more emotional energy to my son than my daughter. None of these are excuses, just attempts to understand how we could have been so blind to the pain we were causing you. I'm sorry, Hazel. Truly sorry that we made you feel less important, less worthy of celebration. You deserved better from us. I would like to visit your lake house someday if you're willing to have me. Not right away. I understand you may need time and space, but perhaps when the leaves change in autumn. Your father isn't ready to have this conversation yet, but I hope he will be eventually. With love and regret, Mom." I read the letter 3 times, tears flowing freely by the 3rd reading. It wasn't a perfect apology. There were still hints of justification in her explanations, but it was more acknowledgement than I'd ever received before. It was a start. 2 weeks later, Jackson came to visit the lake house alone. We sat on the dock with beers as the sun began to set, talking more openly than we had in our entire adult lives. "I never realized how much Mom and Dad favored me," he admitted. "It was just normal to me that everything revolved around my games, my achievements, my schedule." "It's not your fault," I said, meaning it this time. "You were a kid too. Kids don't question when adults make them the center of attention. Still, I should have noticed as I got older, especially those combined birthday celebrations. Those were bullshit, Hazel. I'm sorry I never spoke up." I shrugged. "Would you have in my position?" "Probably not," he admitted. "I probably would have done exactly what you did. Try harder then, withdraw, then build my own life elsewhere. We talked until well after dark, covering years of unspoken feelings and misunderstandings. For the first time, I felt like we were relating as equals, not as the golden child and the afterthought. Before he left the next morning, Jackson asked, "Basant, will you come to my birthday next weekend?" "I'd understand if you don't want to." I took a deep breath. "Not this year, Jackson. I need to maintain some boundaries while I figure out what kind of relationship I want with the family going forward." "But that doesn't mean we can't keep building our relationship separately." He nodded, looking disappointed but understanding. "That's fair. Maybe next year we could do something together, just the two of us, something in between our birthdays that celebrates both of us equally." "I'd like that," I said, surprised to realize I meant it. As summer turned to fall, I began attending a support group for adults dealing with family estrangement and difficult family dynamics. The stories I heard there helped me understand that my experience, while painful, was far from unique. Many people struggled with being unseen or undervalued by their families. Through the group, I began writing about my experiences. At first, these writings were just for myself, a way to process decades of complicated emotions. Later, I started a small blog where I shared anonymous versions of these reflections. To my surprise, the blog gained a following of people who saw their own family struggles reflected in my words. One reader commented, You've put into words what I've felt my entire life, but could never articulate. Thank you for helping me feel less alone." Another wrote, "Reading your story gave me the courage to finally set boundaries with my own family. It's hard, but I already feel more peaceful." These connections brought another layer of healing. My pain reframed as shared experience and wisdom took on new meaning. What had once felt like a shameful secret became a source of connection and even purpose. As promised in her letter, my mother visited the lake house in October. The visit was both awkward and healing. We took long walks along the shoreline, admiring the fall colours reflected in the water. We cooked together in my kitchen. We talked sometimes haltingly about the past and how we might build a healthier relationship moving forward. "I always thought you didn't need as much attention as your brother," she admitted one evening as we sat by the fireplace. "You were so self-sufficient, so capable. I thought that meant you were fine on your own." "I learnt to be self-sufficient because I had to be," I explained. "It wasn't an innate preference. It was adaptation." She nodded slowly, tears in her eyes. "I see that now. I just wish I had seen it sooner." My father remained distant, unable or unwilling to acknowledge the family dynamics that had caused me pain. But even that was instructive. I learnt that I could love him while accepting his limitations and protecting myself from further hurt. By the time the holidays approached, I had established new boundaries with my family. I would join them for Christmas dinner, but not for the entire week as they had initially expected. I would participate in gift exchanges, but I made it clear that I expected thoughtful presents that reflected knowledge of my interests and preferences, not last-minute afterthoughts. Most importantly, I no longer predicated my happiness on their validation. My lake house had become the physical manifestation of my independence, a space where I was centered, where my preferences mattered, where I could invite others in on my own terms. 6 months after buying my lake house, as winter settled over New Hampshire, I sat by my fireplace, reflecting on the journey that had brought me here. The flames cast a warm glow over the living room, now fully furnished with pieces I had carefully selected to create a space that felt truly mine. The past months had been transformative. My relationship with my family had shifted in ways both subtle and profound. After my mother's visit in October, she had made consistent efforts to connect with me on my terms. Our weekly phone calls now included genuine questions about my work, my house projects, my friends, not just updates about Jackson. My father had been slower to change. His initial anger about my excessive purchase had eventually given way to a grudging respect for my financial independence. During their Christmas visit, I had overheard him telling a neighbour about my daughter, the successful tech executive with the lake house. There was a note of pride in his voice that I had rarely heard before. Jackson and I had established a new kind of sibling relationship, one built on mutual respect rather than the uneven dynamic of our childhood. He had recently separated from Tracy, realizing they wanted different futures, and in his vulnerability had reached out to me for support in ways he never had before. "You're the strongest person I know," he had told me during one late-night phone call. "You've always known who you are, even when no one else saw it." I sense. His words had touched me deeply, acknowledging not just the pain of my invisibility, but also the strength I had developed because of it. Beyond my family, I had built a community around my lake house. My neighbours, initially curious about the single woman who had bought the cedar house, had become friends. Ellen and George from 2 doors down often joined me for coffee on weekend mornings. The Patel family across the lake invited me to their Diwali celebration. Mark, the retired English teacher at the end of the road, had started a small book club that met monthly in various lakeside homes. My support group for adults with complicated family relationships had become another source of community. Sharing my story had connected me with others, working through similar challenges, creating a network of understanding that had been missing from my life. Perhaps most significantly, I had learned to truly celebrate myself. My lake house wasn't just a physical space, but a monument to self-worth, a daily reminder that I deserved to invest in my own joy. As I sat watching the flames dance in the fireplace, I thought about my upcoming 35th birthday still months away. For the first time in my life, I was considering inviting my family to join my celebration, not as the primary focus, but as guests in the life I had built for myself. The lake house had never been about revenge or making a point, though it had certainly accomplished both. It had been about claiming space, both literal and figurative, in a world that had often made me feel peripheral. It had been about refusing to wait any longer for external validation that might never come. I picked up my phone and scrolled to the photo I had posted on my birthday 6 months ago. Me on the dock, the house visible in the background, my face alight with genuine happiness. The caption remained simple: birthday gift to myself. Too soon. The image had sparked a family reckoning, but more importantly, it had marked the beginning of a new chapter in my story. One where I was the author, not a secondary character. Outside, snow fell softly on the frozen lake, transforming the landscape into a winter wonderland. In a few months, spring would come, bringing new growth and possibilities. Then summer would return, bringing with it my 35th birthday, and another opportunity to celebrate myself in this space I had created. The lake house wasn't just a birthday gift to myself, it was the beginning of a life where I finally understood that while we can't choose our family, we can choose how we allow them to affect us. And sometimes the greatest gift we can give ourselves isn't something we can buy, but the courage to define our own worth. Have you ever had to create your own celebration when others forgot what was important to you? I would love to hear your stories in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe to hear more journeys of self-discovery and healing. Thank you for being here with me today, and remember, sometimes the best way to be seen is to finally see yourself.